So yeah, I've been doing a lot of research into philosophy. I'm basically just doing like a deep dive back into it. Um, and it's super weird getting back into everything after years of not studying it. So I feel like I'm relearning it all again. Although, it's coming back pretty quickly, but I've just been doing this crazy deep dive. I have an entire structure how I'm going to research everything. I just finished I just finished metaethics. Before that, I was learning epistemology, and then I'm gonna start
Okay.
metaphysics after I finish this video on metaethics. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Um,
Wow.
but also, I feel like I'm getting closer to the truths of the universe.
Oh, well, tell me what do you want to put us on the cutting edge of what you've discovered?
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin. Like I've realized so many things from doing this stuff. Um, that it's crazy. It's like things that I couldn't express before verbally are kind of like connecting now because I'm learning these new words that kind of manifest the concepts into real tangible things.
Like, give us an example.
Okay. Well, let's talk about meta ethics maybe, if you're cool with
Yeah.
that. Okay, so I just finished recording my video and I was just editing it, but essentially I was going over meta ethics. So there's three branches of ethics: meta ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. And I'm on meta
Right.
ethics right now. Um, and the question of meta ethics is what is good, right? So normative ethics is like deontology and consequentialism. You remember those, right?
Yes, I do. Yes.
So those are like what should we do? What ought we do, right? We ought not murder. We ought not steal. That's normative ethics and applied ethics. But meta ethics goes a little bit deeper than that. It's what is good. So it's not what should we do, but what is it
Does it
that
put
we
it
are.
on a more absolute scale?
It's a much deeper scale because normative ethics assumes what is good because you're going towards what is good. So like a consequentialist would say well-being is what's good. But meta ethics is more like, are you sure well-being is good? Why is well-being good? Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Probably not because it's very complicated. But
Well, to the degree that I can understand it and the way that you've described it.
okay, that's good because I'm trying my best. So there's two main branches in meta ethics, okay? The first one's called cognitivism, and the other one's called non-cognitivism. And I'll make this super simple. Cognitivism is just the idea that morality exists, and non-cognitivism is the idea that morality does not exist. Now that's super reduced because its real definition is a lot more complicated than that. But like that's like the reduced definition of it. Okay,
Okay, one more time. Which one's which?
cognitivism says that morality exists, and non-cognitivism is the opposite. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because like, well, you know
It
what
sounds
morality is.
like what it sounds like is with the way that those terms are is it sounds like a question that you could infer is does morality um, transcend consciousness?
Well, yeah, and I guess in a different kind of way. Another thing could also be, is morality independent of consciousness,
Yes.
which might be what you were referring to when you said it transcends, as in
Yes.
instead of them being linked, are they separate, right? So like the
Exactly.
cognitivist would believe that morality exists independent of human consciousness, and the non-cognitivist would say that morality is a construction of consciousness.
Okay.
And like these are like the super the most basic levels you can possibly get, because it branches into some crazy stuff. But I think it doesn't really. I think that's the point that matters most right there, at that very top level, with the difference between cognitivism and non-cognitivism. And so the question really with metaethics is morality real? And from like, you already know my answer to this because I told you years ago, but I found a way to verbalize it in a way that I wasn't able to before, and
Yes.
I understand it much better now.
It falls under the degree that you took on, I believe. So, but we were sort of discussing how in the positions that you've already talked about, which I know about because, like you said, we've talked about it for a few years. Um, it sounds like you've been able to come up with some nuance and some clarity
Yeah,
to,
yeah, basically.
and I'm excited
It's
to hear about it.
the age-old debate of morality exists or it doesn't exist, and that's sort of what metaethics is getting at. Um, and like I told you, there's the two positions: the cognitivist position, where they believe that moral statements can be true or false, and that kind of implicitly suggests that morality exists. And then the non-cognitivist position is basically just saying, yeah, morality is not like morality isn't morality. It's not independent from consciousness. It's something we construct.
Right.
And in my opinion, I would fall under the non-cognitivist position, so therefore I wouldn't believe in morality. But I think you might fall under the cognitivist position, right? Because you probably believe that morality exists.
Right.
Right. So, um, I did just write an essay on it, but I guess I have five main arguments against why I think the cognitivist position isn't isn't coherent.
Okay.
Do you I guess, do you want to hear my critiques,
We can listen to what you have to say.
and then maybe you can give me an answer?
I can maybe offer a little bit of feedback from my perspective.
Okay.
I'm not
All
sure
right,
if
cool.
it'll be an outright refutation. You know what I mean? I don't have time to crystallize counterpoints in a counter narrative. Or the
That's
same
fair. That's
one if
fair.
I agree, but I'll do my best to lay into it or whatnot.
Okay, well, I'll walk you through it, and then you can just kind of tell me like your intuitive thoughts on it.
Sure, yes.
Okay, now I'm speaking your language. Okay, so here's my first argument. How do we know moral truths? And so the argument goes like this: moral realism says that there's objective moral truth, right? Truth independent of the conscious mind.
Say that
But it
one
doesn't.
more time.
What?
Say that part one more time.
So moral realism suggests that there are objective moral truths. Do you track so far?
Moral realism says that there are moral truths.
Yes.
That's what you just said.
Yeah. Do you
And
agree
what
with
does
that, or
that
do you
mean?
disagree?
What is
What
that?
does
What
that
is
mean?
that
So,
supposed to mean?
okay. Actually, I just learned this term, and this would be good to clarify terms. This isn't going to be important in the meta ethic conversation. There's two different things. There's something called a value statement and a truth statement, and it's very simple. It's exactly what it sounds like. A value statement is a statement about something that you value, okay, and a truth statement is something that is true. So a truth statement would be water is wet, and a value statement would be I don't like murder, or murder is wrong. Or
Right.
no, that would be murder. I don't like murder. That would be a value statement. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so moral realism is basically saying that when we're talking about objective moral truth, it's saying it's a truth statement, not a value statement, meaning that it's a fact. And facts aren't facts are independent of human minds, right? Like gravity
Yeah.
exists whether you are alive or not, right? Because that's a fact.
So
So
far as we understand it, yes.
right, exactly. So the moral realist would say that
Well, and so far as it has, I guess, applicable consequences, right? Yeah, like if we can test it and
yeah,
like we could determine things based on yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, right. So the moral realist would say that morality exists independent of humans. So something can be bad whether a human is there or not.
Right.
But here's the problem: how do we know what these moral truths are, right? And if you ask that question, your mind's going to go blank immediately because you're going to think, okay, how do I know what's moral and what's not moral? Like, can you think off the top of your head like an answer to that question? How do we know what is moral?
Right, and or whether or not that land whether or not that morality has a shifting landscape.
Exactly. And if it's a shifting landscape, you've already given up the idea on objective moral truth
Exactly.
because it's not a fact doesn't shift. It doesn't progress. It's static. It doesn't move. So if you think that morality is a shifting, if you're a cultural relativist or if you're a moral subjectivist, you'd believe that morality is kind of like transcendent. Morality is attached to human consciousness, right? It's not independent. It's not immutable.
Or conscious being. Like it could also it can also extend outside of us and also like yeah, conscious. But I guess to your point, um it would be subjective so far as in it's like, you know, what's going on at that particular point in time if it's established that like whatever morality is in place is trying to protect the conscious being and conscious beings. um I mean, my personal argument in that particular situation would be like, you'd want to do the most to protect all conscious life, like not just like human, although that would be top priority in that situation. But like, um, yeah, like no, I don't want to digress too much, but like that would be that other side of the coin, I guess.
No, I mean that's a good point. So you said you like that's a good thing we can talk about. Like you said you want to protect conscious life as much as
Or like
possible. Is that right?
that's another perspective where it's um like I mean, even like science like shifts, and like to some extent, like some things can sort of, I guess, like, well, me actually, I'm saying too much. Like everything in this realm, I feel like has so much weight, so I really need to be careful with what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I realized immediately when I got into this field. I'm like, oh shit! Like, first of all, words have multiple meanings when you get into this realm, so you have
I
to be
hate the English language, yo.
you have to be extra pedantic, and it's really annoying because
I'm
you could say
circling
the
around
wrong
something.
thing,
I feel like I know like my body sort of knows, but like, yeah, you're right. It does take some time to come up with the right words to
especially
accurately describe what's going on.
especially with the trigger word good, because the word good here can mean literally like 1,000 different things.
Right.
And that's why you might want to veer away from the word good in a conversation in metaethics, um, like when you're referring to something, because the word good is literally the subject of the entire conversation of metaethics. In fact, I think I already told you this, but like the definition of metaethics, like the reduced definition of metaethics, is like the study of what is good, because that's what we're trying to figure out. But yeah, so anyway, so yeah, so how do we know moral
Well,
truths?
well, I guess to some extent, the question of like, doesn't would you maybe to say that the question of morality, like to some extent, as far as humans have conceived it, I feel like morality has a very large attachment to consequence. If you know what I mean, where
Yes.
like if you do something bad, regardless of whether or not you think it's a subjective bad or whatever, if it could be perceived that way, or you feel that way in your heart or whatever, somehow that lends itself to, either punishment here on earth, physically, emotionally, financially, whatever, or you get some sort of punishment thereafter. And I think that's an interesting point. I just came up with it. But
No,
because
that's one of the biggest
if
debates.
if you believe in something, if you don't believe in something, let's say, like, that's necessarily happening after this life, like, it's pretty easy to conceive of good and bad in the Christian way of thinking, because you could say more structured than not when it comes to, like, sins and different things, and, like, definitive places that you'll go, and paying for your sins. Like, there are tangible ways that we've tried to describe what that might look like. um but if stuff like that isn't even the case, then,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily feel any repercussions, like, as this being that ends up transcending your body, going into whatever's going next. It might be pretty hard to distinguish what morality is at that point, or if it has any actual tangible meaning.
So
um
it's really
you know what
interesting when we get into religion, because I would almost distinguish morality from religion. I would almost say those are two separate things. And the reason I would say that is because, from what I understand, and I think I saw a graph of this somewhere, where so
Well,
there's
isn't
something
that how
called,
we as humans have, like, also, like that's how we've sort of formulated our subconscious morality, like, through the expression of religion.
it's hard to tell, honestly. It's hard to tell, if we developed, because I'm trying to be this from a non-biased position,
Yeah.
like a non-theist position. It's hard to tell if we created religion from our intuitions and like our rationality, or if religion guided like human development over millennia. And but here's the thing: I found there's a ethical theory called divine command theory, and this is what religion falls under. And interestingly enough, I believe this falls under non-cognitivism, which is the idea that morality just doesn't exist. And the reason that it falls under that is because I think that the idea of religion doesn't ascribe to a rational view of morality, right? If you think about it, religion is not rational. It's literally an appeal to authority. It's illogical. Um, so that's probably why it falls under that. But yeah,
Well,
divine command
did
theory.
you get my main did you get my main point, though, about, like, regardless of what we can, my main point was, like the ultimate mix that is associated between consequence and morality. And, like, I guess my question to you is if there is not necessarily a consequence tied to action, which is really the only thing that has a moral weight, let's say. um how do you distinguish any sort of tangible objective morality to that?
So can you rephrase that? Are you talking about consequentialism?
I mean, sure, I guess. Like, so let me say this a different way. So morality is largely judged on action, right?
Right.
Something that is passive doesn't, or, well, actually, well, how do you distinguish, like, if there weren't consciousness at all, does morality exist?
Yeah, that's the question. That's the question. So
And you're saying
all I was talking about Sam Harris talking about desiring what we
Yes, and
desire.
how he wasn't equipped to talk about philosophy, but he
Philosophy.
did posit something very important,
Yeah.
which is
Um desires. We pursue that which we desire. And there is no way to not pursue what you desire. Right? Do you think you could try to argue with that statement?
not really.
Right? That seems like a definite statement. It's the same thing as A equals A, right? You can't argue against A equals A.
Okay.
Um, you pursue that which you desire. That you can't. Even if you tried to not pursue that which you desire, you would be pursuing that which you desire, which was trying
One
to not
often
pursue.
finds his path on the road he takes to avoid it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, that's interesting to me, because if that's the case, that seems like another, case against moral realism. But I mean, I think I have you on my side now. It's funny because that was argument one. I had four other arguments. I think that was one of the weaker ones too, which is hilarious. But
Well, I
but
was
yeah,
already
so
convinced, I think,
yeah,
because in like some Eastern thought, uh, there is no inherent value to anything. So, which is, I mean, I feel like it's basically the same thing to some extent. Like, if there's no inherent value, value can be synonymous with morality, and that, like, like there's not
yes.
like, yeah,
And I think this does a lot of damage to the world. Like I think this idea really is going to rub people the wrong way. The idea that of not moral realism, because if you think about it like this, when we get rid of moral realism, we are getting rid of the ideas that humans have intrinsic value. Like now
exactly, and we don't.
we don't have
Nothing does.
intrinsic value. And also humans don't have rights. Like they because they don't have value, they're not moral agents. They don't have rights. Um, it's like this whole idea of like
But
because
listen, I
morality's
think I think that we could still. I feel like because morality does. I think that like there is an argument for practical morality, and like having a system where somebody has rights could make more sense because like this is just a more efficient way that and a more intelligent way that human beings are able to um organize. You know what I mean?
right, but then it'll be functional utility. It won't be intrinsic value, right?
Right. Of course. No. Of course. And I guess I'm just trying to say that.